This video is brought to you by the Star King, protector of Underworld, denouncer of foxes, so nobody lies to you about Underworld. Finally got to meet Alice in the real world as she has to face a battle to prove her existence, but a bigger war is brewing for the existence of VR on an entirely different front where the Star King has made himself known. Meanwhile, Kirito and Asuna just woke up to a casual afternoon, so at least they're having a decent enough time. The inter-intelligence war is approaching, but before that happens, welcome everyone, it's me Gamerturk, your best source of Art Online information, and this is Alicization Explained, featuring War of Underworld episode 22, Alice. Short overview, as stated last week, we are now in epilogue territory. This episode adapted exactly half the remaining content in the books, coming up to midway part 7 of the epilogue, leaving part 8 and prologue 3 for the next week. And if you read my tweet from right after the episode aired in Japan, well, I believe that was the best way I could put it. That was a 50-page adaptation, so cut content is clearly recognizable, but with only 2 episodes left for the entire 100-page ending of Volume 18 Alicization lasting, this is by far the best they could have achieved. For once, I'm even gonna say there was no proper solution to this. 2 is too short, but 3 episodes would have been way too long, way too stretched out. What can I say? I love the epilogue because it brings such an epic saga to a calm and mysterious close, but it certainly isn't everyone's cup of tea due to the obvious lack of action and the overabundance of exposition. The epilogue is just one massive exposition, so it would zone out way too many people if it wasn't trimmed properly. And I sure do hope those who wouldn't have gotten bored are currently watching instead of being baited by foxes, because rather than clickbaiting you all, what I do here in Alicization Explained is essentially provide you all the vital information on characters, events, action, lore from the source material, light novels, things that the anime did not convey properly or just did not have the time to, so you can still see the full picture. If you want to jump to specific events, timestamps will be in the description along with Amazon and Book Depository affiliate links so you can grab the novels for yourselves. As the Alicization anime is coming to a close, you can jump onto the Alicization side story volume 19 and 20 Moon Cradle now, with the beginning of the next main arc, Art Online volume 21 Unital Ring 1, getting released in January 2021 by Yan Press, so do grab your copies down below. With that, let's cast away the sly foxes spreading misinformation and get on with Alicization Explained. And how about we start the Explained with a scene that was cut out right from the get-go. I usually don't talk about scenes that I suspect the next episode may cover, but the chances of this getting showed is so little in my opinion, I'll mention it this week right here. Not like it's super vital or anything, but it was the build-up for the dialogue between Higa and Star King. And on top of that, I can already hear you yelling, "What happened to Kayaba?" since last week anyways, so this scene was basically the answer to that, which the epilogue opens up with even before the press conference. Down in the bottom of the ocean, there's a trans-Pacific optical cable connecting Japan and the US called FASTER. Naturally, being deep down in the ocean, it did have a crab-like maintenance robot as a first responder for issues that may arise, and after 3 years, the crab received its first signal since it's been sent to the bottom of the ocean. Following the sonar signal, it eventually found a humanoid machine resting on the sea floor. It was even crushed in certain places due to the water pressure at that depth, but it had a cable in its hand, the other end of which stretched all the way up into the darkness of the sea with no way to see where it went. And the crab had one single order: grab the cable, reel it into its stomach area, and then push it to its connector end. The crab didn't care about the humanoid object at all, it didn't care what the result was. Its task accomplished, it started the journey back to its seabed terminal for another slumber after connecting the severed cable. And removing the theatrics out of that and clarifying what we had in the books, basically, Kayaba's full consciousness was never in Nemon. I mean, for someone that exists in the internet, it would have been stupid anyways to load it all into a mortal body. And using that mortal body, Kayaba grabbed an isolated optical cable from Ocean Turtle, used the robot body as an anchor to get the cable to the seabed, sent an SOS signal to the maintenance bot, and had it connect the cable to the Trans-Pacific cable, effectively leaving a back door open to the Ocean Turtle. And with that, we move on to the press conference. Some minor dropped scenes here at the beginning with the main cast crew watching some pre-conference shows and commenting on their time in Underworld, which I won't go further into. I like they kept her salute from her knighthood in regards to Alice, including her holding the hilt on the side when bowing. Really nice touch there. I know another question you will have is, how did they get her a real body so fast? Well, for starters, it hasn't been so fast. It's been over 3 weeks actually since the incident. Neimon was already a fully functioning vessel for a floodlight, so all they did in those 3 weeks was to streamline it and add a silicone skin over. Even today we have lifelike dolls, the novels mentioned in this timeline. You can find just as lifelike robots all around the town, and the only difference is how Alice acts and moves, which is solely achieved by the fact that she has a consciousness rather than a pre-programmed movement procedure. This is kind of a very minor thing, but I find it to be a weird change, so I'll mention it. It's a very subtle but clear change to the journalist's approach to Alice. The anime made it look like the first journalist doesn't see Alice to be the recipient of the query, directly asking to Rinko instead. As I said, it's quite minor for some people. Maybe I may even be looking needlessly deep into it, but the recipient of this question in novels was Alice herself. The journalist was asking Alice how she was different from the usual robots. Maybe that's just the memories of playing too much Detroit Become Human, but addressing her for an answer was a meaningful gesture for me in this context, despite the fact that Rinko still interfered and answered herself anyways in the books. I love Alice's retort. It makes it very clear why Rinko did not want Alice answering this question from the get-go, while the anime plays it off quite chill, like a joke. Well, once you think about it, you probably don't want your breakthrough scientific accomplishment going on a massive pissing contest with the first question she was asked in the reveal conference. It is saddening but not surprising at all that the human rights portion of the press conference was severely trimmed. When you hear Rinko talking about maybe one day we'll even get married with robots, it sounds like it's coming out of nowhere. In the novels, however, the argument had a very clear and resounding beginning, that being, we should not repeat the mistakes of the past, referring to the colonialism and slavery directly in her speech, and how that past was still affecting, haunting the world after 100 or 200 years after, as well as the long past of the humankind preceding that. So Rinko's argument of we don't know what will happen in 100 years, it was very much solidified in the fact that the exact same cycle happened time and time again in human history the exact same way. But I know it's boring to hear humanity is not about the body but the soul itself, and you would rather yell, Alice loves Kirito! I know, let's forget humanity is a terrible species, that many countries still have severe issues with grasping humans can come in different specifications, and talk about what Alice meant. Alice has no romantic feelings towards Kirito. That about does it for my explanation. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. If you want a more in-depth explanation, I believe War of Underworld episode 5 explained was when I talked about in depth about this, even preparing for this scene over here, so yeah, go ahead and watch what I said there instead. Or you can check the dictionary meaning of the word love to see it's not solely about baby making, but rather has quite a varied meaning depending on the context, and we know Alice's context from her inner monologues that she tells herself, not from the facade she puts up for others to see on the outside. So, today's lesson? Stop being dicks to other people or living creatures. Be kind. Treat other people and animals with the kindness you would want from them, for fuck's sake. It's not a hard concept, just be kind. Back to Higa and Kikuoka. For starters, the TV show is a massive reference to ordinal scale, where they were talking about the Ogma. In fact, the guy on the left is exactly the same who is not one of the two people from the beginning of SAO. They are confirmed to be different people who showed up later in the series too, but that's already too long of an explanation for such a small reference. Yes, some journalists at the press conference were wearing Ogmas too. If you haven't realized, may as well mention that in this little bracket. But with that, finally moving over to Kiku. I absolutely love his attire, not because it perfectly matches the light novel description, but it's also so hilarious that it is actually amazing that I want to wear it myself. But yes, Kiku is officially the only casualty of the incident. Yanai is not even mentioned, as the research staff is under strict confidentiality anyways, on top of him being a national traitor. But Kiku is still in charge of certain things despite being officially dead, as you'll experience in later scenes. It's nice that they added a glimpse from Higa towards Kirito and Asuna, but the entire context was lost. Things like how the Kirigaya parents were shocked but not devastated, as they had heard the story already from Sugua before the official briefing from Rath, whereas the real problem was Asuna's father, who went as far as threatening to take them to court the exact day, but Asuna's mother stepped in to stop him, confident of Asuna's return in the coming days. And when Kiku noticed the minor activity spikes in their floodlights, Higa was already praying for the return of the duo. The wake up scene, which is taking place 3 weeks after the logout phase was completed, during which time Kirito and Asuna were transported to the Roppongi branch, hence why Alice was simply able to run into the room without having to cross a formidable portion of the ocean to reach the ocean turtle. Let's keep it short. One thing I'll mention is Alice's words. In the anime, they really went with the bait to keep Alice shippers interested, with her only looking for Kirito, whereas in the novels she lunged into the room shouting to both Kirito and Asuna. In fact, the anime decided to not even show Asuna waking up. Not surprised, considering the way Asuna has been treated the entire Core 4, really. I love the old, tired voice Matsuoka gave Kirito for this scene. Really suits how done he is, or let's say fulfilled, for this version of Star King. We'll talk about him specifically in a second, because even on the video we made with SAO Wikia to highlight the fact that we know absolutely nothing about the Star King, people are gushing over him as if they know all so much about the person, which I keep finding hilarious. I'll talk a bit more about Star King next week too, to be more specific about his power after we get some certain scenes. But moving on to the scene of the hospital, I can already see people asking why Asuna is in top shape when Kirito is still being monitored at the hospital. Just in case some people may have forgotten, Kirito had a much more severe condition than just being stuck in a machine compared to Asuna, namely actually being brain dead. That's why his treatment is still going after waking up, you know, because he was dead and was only recovered through a direct connection to his floodlight rather than his neurons and other typical stuff that is not science fiction. Anyways, the blue roses Asuna brings, pale purple roses that did their best to reach a pure blue color according to the novels. It's an obvious reference to Yu-Gi-Oh! It was really neat that the anime added the month-long portion before their memories were cut away as flashbacks. In fact, most of us assumed those flashbacks would be axed entirely, so it was a nice surprise, you know, when you expect something to be cut and it's not cut. It's definitely nice. Starting with their reuniting with the decoy force, heading back to Centauria. Of course, the Eastern Gate with Fanatio was skipped, where they worked tirelessly to bring order into the human empire again. And we even got to see Asuna and Kirito in their delegate uniforms when they went to meet Iskan, who was now the acting commander of the Dark Territory, who decided to have a punch-out with Kirito, which is why they both have those wounds on their faces. Nice attention to detail. And that was as far as their memory was able to trace forward, with everything else no longer existing, or at the very least no longer accessible. There's nothing wrong with the subtitles here, it's just that the nuances of language slip past many people. In fact, this should have been a bit more in your face, like in the books, by making the memories the second part of the sentence in italic or something, but it's the same logic since the beginning of Alicization, nothing different in the sentiment. The memories, even if not accessible, even if they're quote-unquote gone, they live inside you forever. It's been told multiple times already in Alicization. That is just funny to see people nitpicking on the sentiment now, only showcasing their lack of attention. I mean, that's pretty much the summary of the vocal SAO hate, isn't it? I don't think I need to explain anything about Kikuoka's plan to save Underworld. I mean, even in the anime, he's very clear about it. I doubt anyone can possibly misunderstand what's being said here. The moment Kikuoka leaves, however, is the start of another cut scene. The moment he leaves, the duo have a chat about Kikuoka, how he is genuine about his sentiment of protecting Underworld. However, knowing the man, they're sure there's something else behind the sentiment that they cannot yet see, and Kirito even jokes about how it's probably multiple layers of plans that they can't see. After that, the two grab their hemispheres to log into ALO for the big meeting of Underworld visitors under the same big dome that they were called to action. I honestly did not expect them to cut this scene out, as that was their prime opportunity to sneak in as many cameos as possible again, and the place where some of your questions would be answered regarding the fate of the VRMMO player accounts, and even some information on Poe's physical condition. This was also when the final Alice scene was supposed to take place, with Alice calling Kirito saying she's withering away the moment she hung up, but that's not something I'll need to talk about. I feel like the slight change fits without any issues with that final scene, but the ALO players, since the anime didn't mention anything, no, none of them lost their accounts and were able to convert back. The only casualty has been the stolen or destroyed weapons, which is exactly how the Seed handles equipment status in all the worlds. Anyways, I'll go more in depth on that one day if we get to talk about SAO progressive, I don't know, floor 2 or floor 5 content maybe. In fact, Rondo of a Fragile Blade may be a nice story to talk about all those intricacies, but I'm getting ahead of myself. As for Poe, apparently his mental activity continued to linger for about 10 years of the 200-year period, but then slowly dwindled and pretty much disappeared entirely around the 3rd-year mark of the acceleration. However, no information was provided on his physical whereabouts after the events. But that brings us to the Star King sequence with Higa. I don't really want to talk about it too much. The scene itself is adapted marvelously, even improved a lot compared to the novels in my opinion, with flashbacks of the Star King decorating the scene. The talk starts with Higa basically experimenting to see if Kirito's copy would end up crashing after a couple dozen seconds too, so he goes into the convo with the intention of keeping the copy talking, especially considering the consciousness realized he was a copy in the first second alone, but eventually opened up the Pandora's box by his definition. So who knows, maybe soon enough I'll have a video about some Axel World content to check on what that Pandora's box may lead to. The visuals, of course, are great Moon Cradle references. This scene on the bed is very easy to recognize for everyone who read the novels. When the Star King mentions the situation in Underworld being extremely unstable, he's not talking about some event in Unital Ring or anything. It's been 30 years since Star King and Star Queen disappeared, so they do not know much about the state of the world. He's obviously referring to the real world side of things, the maintenance of Ocean Turtle being in a complicated situation. And well, with the following dialogue of Star King mentioning Kayaba, now you see why I opened up with the crab maintenance spot at the beginning of this video. This is where it all ties into, as Kayaba already left behind a back door to reach Ocean Turtle again. As for the ending scene, finally, they use this magnificently sad ending in a beautiful way. I've been waiting for such an ending over visuals for so long. Kirito is still blaming himself for everything, going as far as blaming himself for not having his entire memory of Underworld sealed away. Plenty of questions were asked in prior weeks, asking me about how Kirito would be like in the future, just doom and gloom or his usual happy-go-lucky self, and your answer is right here in this scene, and it's not black and white at all. After all, life is the collective nature of everything we live, good and the bad. All the memories live inside us forever as part of our existence. But that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about from episode 22, Alice. Next week is episode 23, titled New World, and is the final episode of the entire season 3, the 10 volumes long Alicization saga. A disappearance that worries Kirito and Rinko for about a couple seconds of screen time, and then visiting the new world that you have already seen in the Core 4 opening version 2 in the third prologue of Alicization, which is obviously not a prologue for Alicization, but rather for what's beyond. And if that doesn't make it clear for you that Alicization is so obviously not the final season, I don't know what will. And if you want to have a taste of Kirito and Asuna's time in the 200 years of Underworld, I strongly recommend you go ahead and grab Art Online Mooncradle light novels through the affiliate links in the description. That's volume 19 and 20. As usual, send your questions for weekly Alicization Q&A. I didn't have time for it this week, but I already saved some questions and it will be published shortly before the next episode airs, so every following Saturday. If you have questions that you feel like were not answered in the explained episodes, do ask them below in the comment section with hashtag AskGamerturk. If your question is regarding the future, please do add a spoiler warning and give it a couple blank lines to push the spoilers away. And no, I will not answer spoiler questions for the sake of spoilers, like, did Alice just commit Sudoku? If you're that curious for spoilers, just read the books. Amazon and Book Depository links are in the description. And if you made it this far, comment Star King and Star Queen to let me know. If you enjoyed this week's Explained, please do leave a like. If you're new here, subscribe and hit the bell icon for more in-depth coverage on SAO. With Alicization Anime coming to a close, I will have a lot of other lovely SAO stories for you to experience in the near future, like the evening of Kirito's first day on Aincrad, where he was almost killed by another beta tester, so look forward to the first day. I've been repeating this exact same sentence for the past 4 weeks. I need to start working on that video. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter for the fastest news possible. Lens Squad merch is still around, but now we got Medina, Kirito and Yu-Gi-Oh merch too, and we're getting our 50k sub special merch really soon as well, so do check it out. A huge thanks to all my patrons and channel members as always, and until next time, stay cool.